Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. A 13-year-old boy is now in police custody after allegedly killing his mother in Betheltown, Westmoreland last night. She is 44-year-old Petrojam Grace MacDonald. She was stabbed multiple times and her throat slashed. The incident occurred shortly after 8 o'clock. The recent deaths of two returning residents have triggered yet another call from the president of the Jamaica Association for the Resettlement of Returning Residents for the government to do more to protect returnees. TVJ's Anthony Lugg has that story.
December 4, 44-year-old Karen Clary Brown found in a shallow grave in Boscobel, St. Mary. And Wednesday, December 5, 58-year-old Barbara Findley found dead in bushes in St. Elizabeth. Findley was found without clothes and her hands bound with a rope. The gruesome killing of two returning residents in a matter of days has left President of the Jamaica Association for Resettlement of Returning Residents, Percival Latouche, deeply concerned.
Since this morning, I must have gone through 30 calls that come in to say, Mr. Latouche, what are we going to do? Can you talk to the government? Can you talk to the Prime Minister?
Earlier this year, the government assigned a special task force following the attack on British nationals. Mr. Latouche described that as a joke.
Rubbish. We don't need a segregation from the bottom. If you're going to have task force for returning residents, what is going to happen to the local that are here? We must have a country that is running, that the police force is operating in one accord to make sure that the country is violent-free.
And with returning residents questioning whether they should come home after retirement, we asked Mr. Latouche what's his suggestion.
If I were not here and hearing all this and making trips here, I would stay there. If I was younger, I would take up and gone.
He's calling for a sit-down with the government and the police commissioner. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
The opposition continues to deflect blame for some of the issues facing oil refinery Petrojam. In the damning report tabled in Parliament on Tuesday, the Auditor General noted that incidents of bad management, wasteful spending and poor governance spanned a 5-year period. The issue was discussed on TVJ's All Angles last night, and we have more in this report.
All eyes are on the Andrew Holness-led government to see what steps will be taken in light of the Auditor General's report into the operations of Petrojam and to the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, PCJ. The report pointed to poor oversight and monitoring of the affairs of the two government entities. And after 5 years of financial losses, plus the disappearance of 600,000 barrels of oil over the period, many have been asking who should be held accountable.
What is it that the PNP is taking responsibility for in relation to Petrojam?
No, the Auditor General report speaks about what the government is doing. I think the question should be asked, what the government of the day? The PNP is not the government today.
Has a party, for instance, said, hold on, let's look at what happened here so that we can actually do our own internal investigation or discussion or whatever? Or is it just about...
I guess you'd ask about going forward. What would we do?
Because presumably you hope one day to form the government again.
Yes.
And for people to have any confidence in what you are saying, we need to know whether or not you've accepted that, hey, we screwed up in the past, this is how we screwed up.
And
therefore you can take us seriously when we talk about going forward.
Whatever the party leader, Dr. Phillips, have made it clear in the next administration that he leads, no such action will be tolerated by any member of his cabinet that is responsible to him.
Mr. Jackson would not back down.
You cannot sit on a high horse and point finger. That is what Dion is saying. Where do you now say, let us in a sober fashion look for where we went wrong in this situation. Take responsibility.
You keep on going back and refuse to deal with the now.
So if you're looking at history coming, as Dion is saying, right along and across to this point in time, we have a lot in terms of history. The only difference today is a granular amount of details that every Jamaican can relate to.
Administration
That
that
means
is
that when you
responsible for
put yourself
administering the
up as a
business
member of
has
parliament to run
responsibility.
for the country
Yes.
and leadership of this country, if I am angry, you have to sit down and take me anger because you decide so you're going to do that.
Yes, I don't have a
and
problem.
take responsibility
I'm not a
for
problem.
it. So
I'm not a problem
I'm not
with
into
you
politicians
being angry.
who
I'm
get
not a
all
problem
glib
with
and
you
try
angry.
to...
We're
But
not
you
going to
can't
hear when you
misplace
both
your
are
anger.
speaking at the same
You are
time.
not willing to place your anger at
what
the
I am
feet
saying
of
is
who
that
is responsible.
no,
You're
no.
pivoting and want to assign it to an administration behind.
Janella Precious, TVJ News.
Now to more from the findings of the Auditor General's report into the operations of Petrojam and the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica PCJ. TVJ's Herman Green reports.
From a sample of 27 officers, the Auditor General found that 11 of the related posts were filled without being advertised, and there was no evidence that the Petroleum Corporation interviewed or conducted any competency assessment for 8 of the employees. It was also discovered that the PCJ did not adhere to its policy with the hiring of a Human Resource Officer, HR Specialist, and the Business Intelligence Support Officer. Prior to being employed by PCJ, the Human Resource Officer, HR Specialist, who was an external member of the HR subcommittee of the board, applied for the position after the initial candidate declined the job offer. In another instance, a Business Intelligence Support Officer was engaged on July 3, 2017 with emoluments of $7 million without the approval of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. The audit also revealed that, as of September this year, the PCJ had 143 employees receiving an aggregate annual salary of $390 million. While the Finance Ministry approved salaries and benefits for PCJ, there was no evidence that it approved the performance incentives and the reimbursement of gym fees to employees. In addition, PCJ paid traveling allowances to 29 officers without the ministry's approval. This resulted in unapproved payments totaling $48.4 million between 2015 and this year. On August 21, 2009, PCJ requested approval for the continuation of payment of motor vehicle upkeep and transportation allowances, along with the payment of other allowances and benefits. PCJ's request indicated that motor vehicle allowance is paid to managerial staff and transportation allowance to those staff that are required to travel by virtue of their jobs. However, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service indicated in its response, dated October 27, 2009, that it had no objection to the payment of the traveling allowances, provided that the payments will be made to bona fide traveling officers and the appropriate managerial staff, and that the payments are in keeping with government's guidelines. However, the Auditor General observed where payments were made to officers that were not traveling officers that occupied the following positions: Administrative Assistant, Assistant Maintenance Technician, Senior Driver, Librarian, Senior Accounting Clerk. As a result, the Auditor General says the PCJ may have inappropriately paid traveling allowances totaling $38.5 million over the 2015-2016 to 2017-2018 period.
In other news, Education Minister Ruel Reid says the government is taking steps to address corporal punishment in schools. He was speaking at a regional conference on child abuse and neglect in Montego Bay, St. James yesterday. More in this report.
According to Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid, one of the challenges faced by the education sector regarding child abuse is corporal punishment. He says there are specific procedures for corporal punishment in schools, but those are not being followed. This has prompted the government to take further action.
Our Prime Minister has been very strong on this point, and he has given clear directive and mandate for us to put it in a legislative form. Until I've been able to conclude that, I have the authority to outlaw it by giving an edict to say, and we communicate that to the system, that it's no longer allowable. So bulletins have been sent out to the school system in that regard.
Not only that, but
there will be some amendment pursuant to the JTC bill that will have consequential amendment to the Education Act and also the regulations. So we'll put that, Madam Children Advocate, in the revised education regulations.
In a recent case of corporal punishment, a physical education teacher at Vere Technical High School was arrested and charged after being accused of using a piece of PVC pipe to beat a 13-year-old student athlete. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has also called on teachers to desist from the practice, arguing that physical punishment is helping to create criminals in society. Janella Precious, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, children's advocate Diane Gordon Harrison says she was unaware of a United Nations questionnaire seeking information on children in lockup. On Monday, the independent expert leading a study on children deprived of their liberty said Jamaica is yet to provide the information. He says the questionnaire was sent to all Caribbean governments in February this year. We put the issue to the children's advocate.
We can't say precisely what is happening with this one because I certainly knew nothing of the questionnaire, but I'm sure that the response is delayed and that his being here and making contact with the relevant persons will fast track it being submitted.
In news overseas, 2 police officers are dead following a suicide bomb attack in Iran earlier today. The suicide bomber blew himself up after he drove a Toyota van loaded with explosives into the police headquarters. 3 of 28 people were injured in the attack. The chief medic at an emergency center confirmed that their condition is serious. The attack is the first suspected terror attack in Iran since gunmen attacked a military parade in September, killing at least 29 people. And in sports, Cricket West Indies President Dave Cameron believes the team's current struggles are due to a lack of commitment to the team by players. The Windies lost in all 3 formats to India recently and lost to Bangladesh in an away test series for the first time in their history. However, speaking on Hits 92's Sports Grill,
everybody wants the game to be over in 3 hours, and we all want to get rich very, very quickly. We have a board meeting this weekend. We have to make some serious decisions around our West Indies cricket first policy, because part of our challenge is that we're having players who going in and out of the system. They're not fit enough. We've spent millions of dollars on bringing them to where they're at. And we need players to commit to West Indies.
Cameron also says the public needs to play their part in holding the players accountable for their lack of commitment.
It's not an outcry across the region because West Indies is not one country. If this was South Africa, we would not allow our players to be playing other events when West Indies is playing cricket. There'll be a national outcry and people will be banned and all kind of things. But it's okay. And we seemingly don't have the moral authority to force people to play for us, even though we've spent millions of dollars developing these athletes. And so I think we need some kind of a public forum where everybody can get behind us.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Do remember to join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the entire production team, good afternoon.